Have you ever encountered a hurdle with launching or growing your business? Listen, there are two things that run a business, the back end and your soft skills.
Telling you right now, if these aren't in place, you'll lose clients and you'll lose money. You don't want that? Well, you're in the right place.
Hey, I'm Dana.
Hey, I'm Sarah.
We're your hosts of the Entrepreneur Encounter, and we're going to give you a behind-the-scenes glance into our businesses, give you genuine feedback, tips and tricks, plus occasionally bring on guests that care about supporting you to grow your business organically and nurturing authentic relationships. Are you ready? Welcome back, entrepreneurs. Today, we have a guest with us who's here to help us dive into personal transformation. We're excited to talk about how personal transformation, personal work sets the tone for your business. Sarah and I are very passionate about whatever happens in your personal life will affect your business, and what happens in your business will almost 100% affect your personal life. So it is important to focus on both of those. And today, we're going to focus on the personal. Joining us is Jamie, an ICF Associated Certified Life and Mind Rebel Coach, which is a mouthful. She helps her clients quiet their minds and live from their heart. So welcome, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're super excited to have you join us today. Can you share a little bit more about your background and your journey as to what led you to being a certified mind rebel?
Yeah. So my background is in marketing and marketing operations, as well as communications. I worked in 10 plus years, a lot with startup companies, primarily in tech startups. That being said, I eventually was asked to set up a customer relationship management tool for a coaching school. And life coaching is something that I'd always been curious about, while at the same time hearing the backlash of it. They're not trained, they're not therapists, they're not all this up, but there was still something there that I was curious about. So when I took this contract on from a life coaching school, I got to learn a lot more. And I got to learn what coaching actually was, and what it was is us holding space for another human so that they can see the genius and magic in them. That is it in a nutshell. And as I worked more closely with the school, the whispers started getting louder. And I literally had, after reviewing a video they had put out to ask me to review, I had a very emotional breakdown. I remember watching this and hearing about how they train their coaches, what a coach is. And I just knew it was my calling. I broke out into tears, like literal tears, being like, wow, okay, I hear my calling and I need to do this. So I called the person that I knew in the organization, also spoke with the founder, and they were like, you? Oh yeah, you're a coach. Come on in here. So that was almost 2 years ago, if not more. I trained with them for a year, which meant that I also got to be accredited and trained under the International Coaching Federation standards. And I've been doing it now full time for a year and a half. It's been wonderful.
That's awesome.
I love all of that.
I love that, being moved by something and realizing like, this is my calling. Personally, I do get emotional with some things. And I know for a fact that if I get emotional because it's a great thing, I know things are going to happen and it's going to be amazing. So I love that.
Mm-hmm. It's following those emotional navigation tools that we each have in us. And as somebody who intellectualized her feelings, like didn't feel them, like having that moment of everything feels like it's crashing down while feeling such joy to find my path. Yeah, it was very overwhelming. And I knew I had to take it. I had to be brave and take that first step. And honestly, I love marketing and communications. Had I not found this, I would still be very happy in my career and pursuing that and moving forward. But it's just funny. I love sharing this story because like sometimes in life, it's not about because you hated stuff. It's because something else came along that had a higher calling.
Right.
So I have a question. You just said something that I don't think I've ever heard before. You intellectualized your emotions.
Yeah.
I don't even have a proper question for that, but like what?
Yes, I'll explain it. So
I'm an emotional person, but I don't like showing my emotions. And I do tend to analyze the crap out of them. So I'm wondering if that term is something I am more familiar with. I just don't know what it's called. So can you elaborate on that? And is that something you help your clients do to define who they are in their business?
Yes. So let's start with defining what it means. So intellectualizing your feelings is noticing that you're feeling an emotion whether it's sadness, anger, jealousy, even happiness, joy. You're noticing that this feeling is happening and you're understanding why it is happening. So you're like, oh, I'm sad because that friend, what she said really hurt my feelings. It makes sense that I'm sad. Oftentimes, when I work with my clients, what I hear a lot of is, I'm feeling this, and this makes sense because of this. And that is intellectualizing your feelings. And it is very difficult to move from that to actually feeling your feelings. Because what is happening when we're noticing and intellectualizing our feelings is that it is still not being released. It is still not being released from the body. You are still not able to deeply communicate what is actually going on. You just know the surface level stuff. And as somebody who also has a history of that, and then going through the process and learning what it truly meant to partner with my emotions in life, it was a game changer. Because then all of a sudden I was like, okay, now I'm actually feeling the sadness in my body and I'm sitting with it and I'm allowing it to come through. And I could have sat there going, intellectualizing my feelings, being like, yeah, that makes sense. That would hurt anybody. But then now I'm sitting with this sadness and I'm like, oh, this is really hurting me because this reminds me of something that happened to me in the past that was very traumatic. And then you start working with it even more. And you realize that things like what that friend said was maybe not that great. And people need to be held accountable for their actions. But your reaction to it is because there's a deeper meaning to that. And you need to sit and figure out that trigger and work with it. And oftentimes when you move through the emotions, allow them to come up, there is new information and new actions that need to be taken. Maybe it has nothing to do with your friend, but it actually has to do with, I need to take some time for myself, or I need to go have a conversation with someone else that wasn't there for me, or this is reminding me of something else. And you don't know what it's going to be or what that information is going to be until you sit with those feelings.
Oof. Isn't that like almost compared to self-awareness? Like you're aware of your feelings. Would you say that those are one and the same? Because it almost, to me, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
Being self-aware and being like sitting with your feelings, because I know a lot of us, business owners, parents, whatever, we go through emotions, so many emotions a day, all the time. And actually taking the time to process your feelings and like being self-aware. So would you think that's kind of like one and the same?
It is and it isn't. So I know the reason why I say that is because sometimes when I have clients that come in, they are super self-aware. And self-aware is, again, that, okay, that makes sense as to why I'm feeling those feelings. And there's different levels to self-awareness. There's the self-aware of like, yes, I understand why I'm feeling those feelings. And then there truly is a self-awareness of feeling your feelings and knowing that you need to feel your feelings. So that's kind of like the difference. So yes, self-awareness is essentially an easy blanket for both, but there are different levels. And that's why I like to introduce intellectualizing your feelings, because that also brings things that the image of like, oh, I'm stuck in my head, because you're intellectualizing, you're allowing your brain to do everything, but you're not feeling it. And 80% of the communication that happens within us, 80% of it goes from your body to your brain. Only 20% of your communication goes from your brain to your body. So if we're up here in our heads thinking that it does more than 20%, and we're like, yeah, stuff is going to get really unnecessarily messy because you are not operating in the way that you are meant to in this earth.
That makes sense. Okay. Now it makes a lot more sense, because I've taught people like, hey, like be self-aware of your feelings. You're talking about the communication between your brain and your body. That's a good point.
Yeah. And you're right. Be self-aware of your emotions is the first step. And it's a big one. Like going like, I'm angry.
Oh, yeah.
And like being aware of that is a big step. Naming your feelings actually releases a lot of pressure. There is a wonderful doctor, Dr. Taylor. I might mess this up, but I believe she's a Harvard scientist and doctor. She actually did a study that it takes 90 seconds to identify a feeling and allow it to be released. That is it. A minute and a half.
Why does that 90 seconds make me think it's going to feel like an hour?
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
What? 90 seconds?
It takes 90 seconds.
I have so many things I need to research after this recording.
It's true.
That's the ultimate goal, is to 90 seconds, I guess, is to get it to that. How do you navigate that to get it to that point?
So, like Sarah said, the first step is noticing it. The first step is like, oh, I feel this bubbling up. I'm angry. And then the next step is to be like, okay, let's sit with this anger. Now, let's be clear, like sitting with your feelings and doing actions, you're responsible for your actions. Your feelings are just feelings, but you are still responsible for your actions. So we're not saying like sit with your anger and like take it out on like physical things or whatever. No, we're not saying that, but just allowing it to be and feeling it in your body. And then you can actually start to release it.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, I mean, it can be hard because anybody, when you feel a feeling, you really don't want to deal with it. There are times where you just want to like, okay, I'm angry. I don't want to sit here and feel it. So I'm going to go do something else. Like, I'm not saying like anything bad, but I'm saying, okay, I need to go, like when I'm mad, if I'm upset, I go clean the kitchen. I don't like cleaning. Okay. I hate cleaning the kitchen. But if I'm upset, I need to get it off my mind. So I need to distract myself with something else. Because I've sat with my feelings, and I'm pretty sure all of our listeners have tried to do that too. And it can be really challenging because then you think like, oh no, I have these things going on. So
you're right. When we're angry, it makes sense that you want to go, like you go and clean and you go and do something physical. Anger is an energy and you're releasing it. So that is actually your body releasing that anger. If you wanted to come back to it, once that energy is released, you can come back to it and be like, why was I so angry, without it muddling up your thoughts? So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So when you go do the physical activity, cleaning, whatever you're doing, then I guess that's a way to process your feelings. And then you can go sit with it and you're like, oh, wait a minute, that was stupid to get angry at that. There's no reason to like get upset about that. Or I release by cleaning or I release by crying. So
sometimes both at the same time.
Yeah. And sometimes both. You're right. Guilty. Done it.
I did that a few weeks ago. I know I scared the teenage girl that lives with us. She was in the middle of doing her chore. And so she thought she had done something wrong. And I was like, I need you to go and I need to do this. You are not in trouble. I was trying to make sure I communicated that because her mom came out and was like, is everything okay? I was like, I need to do this. Like I got on my hands and knees and was scrubbing the floor without like spot cleaning. Like that's how overwhelmed and like frustrated I was. I was crying and cleaning while everyone in the house was just like, what do we do? And I was like, I got to get it out of my body somehow. And I'm either going to yell at people or I'm going to clean. And I'm choosing to clean right now. So just give me my space.
And that's an example of like massive self-awareness. You being like, I need to do this or I'm going to do an action that I'm going to regret or we're not going to like. That's super, super self-aware.
It's been a long road to get to that point.
Absolutely.
Hey there, listeners. Ever feel like you're struggling to connect with customers or lead your team effectively? That's where soft skills come in.
Entrepreneur Encounter isn't just another podcast. We're a community dedicated to helping early stage entrepreneurs like you master the soft skills that make or break a business.
Technical skills are important, but without communication, collaboration, and confidence, your business might never get off the ground to the next level.
In our membership, Dana and I share actionable insights and tips to help you nurture the soft skills you need to thrive.
Give you access to bonus content, workshops, and a network of like-minded entrepreneurs who are all on the same journey.
We'll teach you how to boost your confidence,
become a leader who inspires and motivates your team,
navigate conflict like a pro,
to resolve disagreements without drama and build stronger relationships,
communicate clearly and concisely, get your message across, build trust, and close the deal.
If you're ready to take your business to the next level, join the circle by clicking the link in the show notes. So with that mindset, how can listeners embrace that? Like, okay, they've worked through being able to sit with it for however long they can. How can they embrace it into like that last step you mentioned of taking action, like to work with their emotions effectively, whether it's personally or professionally? Like, how can they embrace it? And what are some safe or productive ways other than cleaning to release it and to continue to move forward?
Yeah, it is a little difficult to answer because it's very specific to each individual, but I'm going to try my best. So when you are able to release this emotion or sit with it and ask yourself, like, what's underneath this? What's beneath this? And you keep going until you feel like you've gotten to the core of it, and your body will tell you. when you've gotten to the core of this emotion and this reasoning. Then you can sit with that and go, okay. And then you can actually bravely ask yourself, what makes sense? What do I want to do with this? And sometimes it is nothing. Sometimes it is. Like sometimes it's like, I can't do anything about it. But you're so anchored into yourself when you do that, that is why it is the next best action, the next best step for you. Because it comes from your body. It comes from your core because you've worked with it. And I always like to say that the emotions are the very first flag to tell us what's going on, and then gives us that opportunity to figure it out and sit with it. So I always say, I had to start doing this. And the very first time I did it, it was like a little carrot moment for my intellectualized brain. That's essentially what it was. And I almost needed to do that so that now when emotions come up, I'm like, oh, great. Where's that great wisdom? I want it. And it sounds backwards. And potentially the therapists out there are probably like, oh dear, there's some issues with this. Fine. That's fine. But I know that that's working for me. And I know that that's working for some of my clients that come to me when we actually work with it. And then when you actually get that wisdom and your next best steps, and then you see how much trajectory you can get in your business or in your personal life when you do those steps, you start creating new pathways in your brain. And it's good. And it's reinforcing. You keep doing it. And yes, Dana, you said earlier that when you sit with an emotion, you're scared. Like it's scary because sometimes it'll go on for like an hour. Like you feel like it could.
Mm.
Every time you do it, every time it gets easier and easier and faster until you get to a point where you're doing it in the moment. You're like, oh, I'm triggered. Okay, cool. I noticed that trigger. I'm going to sit with it later. Now's not the appropriate time to have the sitting with it because we live in the real world. We have real jobs, families, everything. Okay, I'm going to come back to that trigger. And the goal is to get you to a place of noticing and not reacting.
Not reacting. Exactly. Not reacting.
That's a hard one.
Well, I guess it depends.
So that's a hard one to not react all the time.
Well, it makes sense. We live in a world that is designed to try and constantly get us to have reactions. They're, buy this, do this. You're feeling inferior because of this. Our world is unfortunately designed to do this stuff.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say that because example from yesterday, I have a son who's 7 and he was throwing a fit. And if I kept feeding into it and kept saying, stop or whatever that was my reaction to like, hey, like stop doing that. He's just going to feed into that because kids do things that we want to react to. But there's times where I believe if we're going to react, said person is going to continue doing that. So like if you're having an argument with your spouse and if you keep feeding into it, then maybe they're just going to want to argue back. So in my opinion, you can walk away and then come back to it later. Yeah, because I don't have time for that right now.
No, and that's honoring yourself.
So sometimes with me, because my attention span is like a goldfish, I stress more if I don't process it now. I literally will forget that I was mad and won't, I don't know. I guess it doesn't matter. And in essence, it probably doesn't matter. That means I'm just easily letting it go. But I will forget to process or to analyze the emotion and it'll just happen again. Like it'll be a cycle that I forgot about until it happens again. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's a thing.
And that could be because it's still in your body. So every time it gets poked, the wound gets bigger or it hurts more.
No. So then how does that cycle get broken? Is there a more creative solution that I'm currently unaware of to, I don't know, process it or remember to process it so the wound does not continue to get more sensitive?
I think what would be beneficial is thinking about how do you remember other things? What naturally works for you to be like, oh yeah, I have to go do this thing. Think of it as another task. I need to set a reminder to sit with this emotion so that it doesn't get triggered again and it doesn't come out worse. And everybody's different. So for me, I know writing. If I don't have a chance to do anything, writing something down. I've actually specifically put things in my calendar to be like, I need time. Like I'll book a half hour to be like, okay, we're going to journal this out and I'm going to sit with this and I'm going to like, this is that time space to do that. And I will sit there and I'll journal and write everything out until I feel like everything has come out. And what shocks me every time is it always takes less time than I originally thought it was going to.
As far as like how long it would take you to write everything down, like all your thoughts and feelings.
Yeah. Because once you start opening that can, allowing things to come through, your body wants to get it out. Your body wants to communicate this stuff to you. We're not in a world where it's like our brain against our body. No, it wants to work together.
That makes sense because I cry to let things go. And I've noticed that like after 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever the time is, I cry, I feel better, like it's gone. Like you said, everybody's different in how they feel what they're feeling and how they want to sit with it, how they want to release it. But I truly believe that, yes, writing and crying can be great, but having somebody to talk to as well, because I talk in circles. I tell people if you're just having a bad day or having a great day and you just want to get things out, just vent to me. I'll sit here. I'll be a sounding board. But those are other great ways as well.
That is always our like number one piece of advice. I feel like when people ask, what would you tell your younger entrepreneur self or new entrepreneurs? It's always find a community or a tribe or whatever you want to call it, because even a solopreneur, like you're trying to do all the things and we weren't designed to do all the things alone. So having someone to vent to, even just to vent or to brainstorm, ask questions to, whatever, is super important. Like my dad still to this day doesn't know what I do. He doesn't understand. And I'm tired of trying to explain it to him of what I do. So I talked to Sarah. That's how I met Sarah. We started talking like, here's what I'm working on in my business. Because at the time we were both online business managers, but in very different ways. So we understood the navigating children. We understood virtual remote roller coasters and all the things that come in between it. And that was very helpful. And that's always the advice that I get. I think I actually have cried on one of our coffee chats, probably more, without even meaning to. It's just when life gets overwhelmed, you have someone to talk to.
And that's huge. That is a big tool. And we tend to see that more with women, although there are men that do that too. But it is a beautiful thing in women because we grew up allowing our emotions to be a little bit more accessible with other women and that safety that we provide and everything of that nature. And you're right. You said that we're human. We are meant for a community. We're not meant to do it all alone.
No, I love connecting too much. I would not be able to sit here by myself all the time. So I have a question, Jamie. I'm really curious as to your day-to-day with your clients. Like walk us through like a day with a client. I know that you're a coach. I love what we've been talking about, but I got to know like what exactly do you do with your clients on a day-to-day basis?
So it depends upon two factors. So yes, I'm a certified life coach. I am also a teacher of the Mind Rebel way of connecting with yourself. So it depends upon what my clients are asking for and what they are needing, because a pure life coach is there to ask you questions and to pick up on little nuances, how you say things, what's being repetitive. That is what I do as a life coach. I'm essentially a mirror reflecting back to my clients their genius, their best answers. Because as a coach, we believe that your best answers are found within yourself. They are the ones that you are going to probably most likely follow. They are the ones that you have your own navigation system in this life. That also means, though, that sometimes your best answer is, I need to go to therapy. Sometimes it's, I need to go find another mental health professional. Therapy and life coaching are wonderful modalities, and they are different from one another. So I always like to say that when I'm talking about coaching. The other side of it, like I said, is that Mind Rebel teaching methodology that I am certified to do. So if a client is coming to me and they're like, I would like to learn how to do the Mind Rebel methodology with myself. And what that means is essentially you learn how to identify the different parts of you and work together. So we do things like we identify some of the language that we use is like, who is your guard? Like who's showing up that is not aligned to your authentic self, but who is kind of showing up to do that protection? Who is your mind rebel? So when you're in your mind rebel, what that means is that everything's kind of murky and you can't pay attention to anything. We identify who that is. For every single client, those are different personalities that we get to learn and grow. Then you learn, and then you talk about who's your authentic self. We talk about boundaries and everything of that nature. All those little things do get pulled into my coaching, but being a teacher is a different thing. It's teaching and coaching mixed into one. So it depends on what program that they decide to come to me for. But essentially, the client runs the agenda. So the client gets to choose what we want to talk about, what we want to explore, what are they working on? Then it's a deep conversation that we get to have and we get to explore for the client purely. And I will share things like I'm noticing things I will ask questions to clarify, but it is a safe, deep space for them. It's like magic, but I know that it's not magic. There is always actions for the client to do at the end of the call. Sometimes those actions are like, I need to go clean and cry.
Actions are magical. I would totally believe in magic. And that is right up my alley.
But yes, and I always like to say that the space that a coach holds is just this beautiful space for the client to feel comfortable to explore all facets of themselves. And the way that I can do this and how I know I can do this is because I have been to the depths of who I am as a person. I've done the work to hold that space for others.
Mm-hmm.
So I work with a lot of people who identify as like cycle breakers and black sheep of the family, oftentimes entrepreneurs, because we're trying to build a world that we didn't grow up in. That's the nature of an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I really help them step into that next version of themselves that they want to be.
That does sound magical.
See, I'm telling you. I didn't mention it right away, but during our pre-recording call, she randomly mentioned black sheep. And that is how I've always identified myself in my family to everyone. Like, I am the black sheep of my family. I've never felt like I completely fit, and I never really understood why. So as soon as you said that, I was like, well, you're officially going to be on this podcast, hopefully more than once. I cannot wait to talk to you, because I cannot be the only black sheep in the world who needs to hear the things that you have to say.
Well, here's another thing too. I think people that are considered like a black sheep, I know for me personally, I don't feel that I fit into a lot of circles, and I'm okay with that. What makes me cool is that I'm different than you. And I'm okay with being a black sheep within this circle of people. I'm just saying, like, as a mom and as a business owner, going to networking events and talking to other women, I feel that everybody is the same, and I am not. I feel like my mind works differently than most. And I've come to the point where I'm okay with that. Like, that's me. And I believe that Dana, with your black sheep, and me, whatever you want to call it, I think that helps us build our business, like helps us build and grow our family, because we're different, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it completely makes sense. And this is why I love working with, again, self-proclaimed rebel black sheep too. And the reason why I work with them is because I always think about, yeah, you're not fitting in because you are meant to stand out. You are meant to encourage others around them to tap into themselves. And your life as a black sheep, and why you identify as a black sheep, is because the entire time your life is telling you, you don't belong here, you don't belong here, you don't belong here. I get that. Deep in our humanness, what we want to do is connect and be a part of community. But there is a reason why you're being told that you don't belong here, because you were meant to lead others and show others another way. Because there is not one way to live a life. And you are not here to do a script. You didn't come to this planet to read off a script. You came here to explore, to live, to feel, and to create.
I love all of that.
And it's the black sheeps of the family, or the people that develop other, who actually know this and can guide others to do it. So that's why I like to work with them, because I know that when we step into our authenticity, you encourage everybody else around you to do the same.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we could talk for an hour and a half. So this has been incredibly insightful and energetic, just chatting with you, all three of us in our own rebel ways. For our listeners that identify as the black sheep or are wanting to navigate towards living from their heart and stepping into their purpose, if they haven't quite identified as a black sheep rebel yet, how can they connect with you, reach out to you? Where are you in the interwebs?
Yeah. So the best way to connect with me is actually my website. So that's walkercoaching.ca. I'm also on Instagram at walkerxoxo. And for your listeners and for you for having me on the show, and I greatly appreciate it and loved our conversation, I have a free gift for you and your listeners that if they go on my website, they can download a workbook that actually walks you through working with your emotions. And it is free for them with the name of your podcast, Entrepreneur Encounter. So if they type in that code, they can actually download this workbook for free.
Wonderful.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to go get that book.
It's there for you, Sarah, and for everybody else.
That's awesome. Well, Jamie, thank you so much for this amazing conversation. As always, our information is in the show notes. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.